In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? From my research of short films, I found some of the main conventions are having 2 or 3 main characters, a twist, and a short linear storyline. My film has 2 main characters, the boy who turns out to be Hitler and a girl called Eve. When the boy is alone, he is isolated, and when the girl is around, he is happy. This shows a contrast between being alone and being in love. I chose to have 2 main characters to show the relationship between them and the contrast of love and psychotic behaviour. I've used the convention of having a twist in my film, as at the end it turns out the boy is Adolf Hitler, and the mania and psychotic behaviour is explained. Postmodernism was a key influence in my film and influenced the conventions I used. I used the convention of intertextuality, where I reference other media text. For example, I use a split screen effect in my film, where the character opens a letter to show a postmodern theme, and used influences from 500 Days of Summer and the short film Life is Like a Balloon. Other influences I used were speed-up walking shot as featured in the short film Fate. This showed the trip of the boy without being dull for the audience to watch. I also used influences from Gone Goodbye, where the man opens a letter, and I use this in my film to convey sadness when my character opens a letter. I used influences from Lana Del Rey's Summertime Sadness video for my love montage of happy scenes, and the short film Awake scene, where the boy opens his eyes, gave me an influence for my film, where my character also opens his eyes. Claude Levi-Strauss came up with the idea of binary opposites, and I followed this in my film. I used the opposites to create a contrast and make a more creative film. I used a contrast of love versus evil, loneliness versus gregarious, and sad versus happy. These are clear contrasts which allows an imaginative spin on a love story. In my short film, I decided not to have a lot of dialogue and give the actors a brief idea of what I wanted to be said, and let them interpret that. They were given a script at the beginning, but I wasn't worried about them memorising it, more that I wanted them to understand the general idea and let them act accordingly. I felt like a soundtrack would give me more emotion and place the audience emotions more directly. The music to my film was created on GarageBand, where I modified existing tracks to make a more creative and emotional film. I feel that short films convey simple messages that the audience can relate to. For example, that we can all find love, or that we are all unique and special. I engaged with this in my film, where a boy who finds love ends up being one of the world's most well-known villains. I researched and used conventions of short films to create my own film. How effective is the combination of your main product and ancillary tasks? In the making of my poster, I wanted it to be linked with my film, in the sense that my film is creepy and psychotic, and I wanted to reflect that in the poster. I felt like I achieved this as I made the poster dark and enigmatic. The background is blurred and the face and shoulders are in focus. I wanted it to look spooky to fit with the film and create a sense of mystery, which is a theme also in my film. I also wanted to show a split personality in my film and poster. In the film, I had the boy act as loving and sweet, and then manic and psychotic. I showed this in my poster by taking 2 photos of the boy and editing them differently to show a split personality. I purposely made one side lighter than the other and overlapped a picture of the girl on the happy side, and on the other side I made it darker to signify evil. This relates to Rembrandt-style side lighting, where one side of the face is highlighted and the other is darkened to signify 2 personalities. I used the same title text in my poster and film to have continuity between text. Also, I used a dark colour theme in both my poster and my film to get an enigmatic atmosphere. I wanted my film review to feel different to the other text, to stand out and not feel like I was purposely creating 2 texts that were the same, and so it felt like another person's review. I did this on the software Wix, which allowed me to create a review page that was totally original and looked like a real review. I chose to write it as though someone else, remained unbiased, and writing an honest review that fits with the theme of the review page for my film. I feel that my poster review and film all match the target audience. I have incorporated a Twitter hashtag on the posters, but my film is targeted at people aged 15 to 24, which is typical age of people who use social networking sites more frequently. On my poster, I tried to incorporate the theme of postmodernism into it. I used 2 original photographs of the character's face, which I put together to look seamless. This, however, looks evil, and I tried to use postmodern influences in it. What have you learned from your audience feedback? When making and editing short films, it's easy to not stick to the original idea and think of new ideas along the way. To stop myself from doing this and to create a truly original film still incorporating conventions from short films, I obtained audience feedback from an audience of 15 to 24, where I asked them many questions about different areas of my film. I chose this age group as that is the audience for my film, and is also the age of typical cinema goers in the UK. I asked them questions about the setting, the old-fashioned scenes, the name, the quantity of dialogue, and the music of my film. The results all helped me and gave me influence in making the film. I found out that an isolated scene would be best suited for my film, so I used a river setting. They advised on using old-fashioned style on the clips, which I used the colour corrector in Final Cut Express to create an older-looking scene. They agreed I should use a small amount of dialogue, and the music must fit the mood of the scene, which I incorporated into the film. I also gave them a list of names to choose which one was their favourite, and the majority said Unhinged, so I used the theories of an active audience and used their idea and named my film Unhinged. In order to get audience feedback, I used Web 2.0 technology to get people involved in the making of my film. For example, I could broadcast my film on technologies that my audience age group use, such as YouTube or Facebook, which is what my audience feedback suggested to do. How did you use media technologies in the construction and research, planning and evaluation stages? The process of making and editing my film and ancillary tasks would not be successful without the use of digital technology. For the research of short films, I used software such as YouTube to research short films where I recorded information that may help me further along the course. I then exported this information in various ways to show my audience. I used Web 2.0 to achieve this, where I used programs such as Prezi, Taggle, Spicy Notes, and SlideShare. These allow me to present and research findings in a creative way. The main way, however, that I presented my findings was on my WordPress blog, which is the source of all my activities throughout the year. I put all my research planning and progress on here, which allowed me to be organised and present it in a different way. This allowed me to gather my work and display my research so I could refer back to it in the making of my film. When editing my film, I was able to use technologies that I've not used too frequently before. These included Final Cut Express, iMovie, LiveType, GarageBand, and Fireworks. These allowed me to edit my clips and create different aspects of my film. I used iMovie to import the clips and crop them down before exporting them into Final Cut. iMovie is simple software that allowed me to do exactly what was needed, however it doesn't have the complex tools I needed to edit my film. This is when I transitioned to Final Cut, mainly for modification of clips and arranging them in a continuous, seamless way. I use the editing software and transitions of Final Cut, however it is more difficult to use, which took me a while to get used to it. But now I'm comfortable using it, and I am confident that I've made the most of the program when editing my film. After editing my film, I needed to create sound to match the mood, so I used GarageBand to create the music. I wanted music to match the mood of my scenes, so I used the music on GarageBand and modified them to fit to my film. To create the titles to my film, I used LiveType, which allowed me to create the titling. I used Fireworks to create and edit my poster. Fireworks is less complicated than Photoshop, however it takes a long time to create layers and edit everything separately.